Namaste, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. I welcome you all to yet another insightful session, episode 6 of Exploring Sanatana Dharma series, an initiative by Aham Brahmasmi Foundation, a unit of Dakshinam Nayar Sri Sharda Peetham, Sringeri. In the previous episode, we learned about the basic concept of God in Hinduism, the various Devatas worshipped in Hinduism, and gathered answers to some of the basic yet important and popular questions, such as what is the concept of God? Why do we have so many deities in Hinduism? What is the need to worship God? And also gain information about how beautifully science and philosophy comes to a confluence in our glorious Sanatana Dharma. In today's session, we'll discuss more about the various sects of Hinduism, their beliefs, and worshipping methods. Before we start the session, let's once again welcome our very distinguished young and prolific scholar, Shatavadhani Vidwan Sri Lalithaditya Gannavaram. Welcome, Lalithadityaji. Lalithadityaji, what are the different sects in Hinduism? We have Vaishnavas, Shaktas, Shaivites, Ganapatyas, and so on. So, what are the differences in their belief systems and also their worshipping methods?
So, in the beginning, offering my namaskaras to the Pada Padmas of the Abhay Jagat Gurus. There are mainly 5 sects that we see in Hinduism. Those that worship Shiva, Vishnu, Devi, Ganesha, and Surya. Correspondingly, they are called Shaivas, Shaktas, Vaishnavas, Sauras, and you had mentioned the word Ganapatya, which is a common use in common usage today. As per the Vyakarana of Samskrita, it should be Ganapata. Even in the older texts, we find them referred to by that name. So these are the main 5. And we also find a 6th called Skanda or Kaumara, the worship of Subramanya or Kartikeya. So these 6 are called the Shanmatas, the 6 sects of Hinduism. It is interesting because it is similar. They all share a similar form of worship, but each with their own individual styles as well. So there is a commonality as well as an individuality to each. Um, the simple answer is that the Shodashopachara Puja, the standard form of puja that you do for any devata is the same. So the 16, the dhyana, avahana, asana, dhyana, the arghya, padya, achamana, then snana, and then vastra, upavita, and dhupadeepa, naivedya, all of these upacharas, these 16 upacharas are common to all devatas, to the point where the mantras used for each upachara also are the same. It is just that the names of the devata will change. So in one place you'll say Vishnu Avahayami, in Shiva Puja you'll say Shivam Avahayami, in some places you'll say Saraswati Avahayami or something like that. And there'll be shlokas usually that go with each upachara. Those shlokas will change based on whichever devata the puja is done for, and you will find these shlokas and things usually either in the Puranas. There are many Puranokta vratas that you will find, and they're also found sometimes in Tantra. So those the tantras of those deities. So in terms of the actual type of worship, worship takes a few forms. We have, for example, just japa. We talked about what a mantra is in the last episode. So doing just japa of that devata's mantra, that is one form of worship. Then you have worship to a vigraha, wherein you will have an actual idol in front of you with a face and hands and feet and all of that in the form of the devata, worshipping that. And then there are rules for how that vigraha should be made, what size it should be, what material it should be made out of. And generally, what is prescribed is for the devatas that we keep at home to do regular puja to, they should be no bigger than a thumb span. Or one more thing that this is, they should fit in the palm of our hand. Like if you hold the vigraha like this, it should be able to fit in that. The larger the devata is, the more upacharas or the more naivedya that particular devata in that vigraha will need. So that is just something to keep in mind. Besides this, we also have yantras. So earlier, as we said, the mantra is the sonic manifestation of the devata. The yantra is the geometric representation of the devata. So it is not like the yantra is once again some place where the devata lives. Like the yantra is the Devata represented through geometric patterns, which is why in the Sri Chakra also, we do say like, Sri Chakra Bindu Nilaya or Bindu Madhya Vasatihi. We say that Devi stays in the Bindu, that dot in the middle of the Sri Chakra. But it is also the fact that Sri Chakram Shivayor Vapuhu, that entire Sri Chakra is the form of Shiva and Shakti combined. So, in that sense, the yantra is not some property of the Devata, but it is the Devata in those circles or squares or triangles or petals or whatnot. So, that is also one form of worship. And then one more very particular form of worship that we have is the Shila. So, of these five, the Shiva, Shakti, Ganesha, Vishnu, and Surya, there are Shilas corresponding to particular rivers that are used to worship that Devata. For example, for Shiva, we very commonly have the Banalinga, which is found in the Narmada river. So, that river and the Shilas of that river are said to be the form of Shiva, and they do not require a Prana Pratishtha. So, for example, if we have a Vigraha of Shiva or Vishnu made, you would have to do Avahana of that Devata's Kala and that Devata's Shakti into the actual Bimba, the idol. Because for us, the idol itself is not Bhagavan, right? We see Bhagavan in the idol, we invoke Bhagavan in the idol. So, those Vigrahas will need Bhagavan to be invoked in the idol. Whereas for a Banalinga, it comes with the Prana Pratishtha said to be already done. It is as if Prana Pratishtha has been done. So, the Shila of that Narmada Shila, that Banalinga, will be Shiva himself. That is how we worship it. In the same way, in the Gandaki Nadi, which currently flows through Nepal and that northern part of the country, that is where we find the Salagramas, the Vishnu Salagramas, which are very popular. The Vishnu Salagrama is very known to be a form of Vishnu. And so those are only found in the Gandaki Nadi. So that also is the same way. You do not have to invoke Vishnu into the Salagrama once more. And within this also, depending on the type of Salagrama, there will be Vishnu Salagrama, Lakshmi Narayana Salagrama, Narasimha Salagrama, Varaha Salagrama, Rama Salagrama. So depending on the form of Vishnu and the qualities of that particular Salagrama, you will classify them. For example, if the opening of the Salagrama is wide and it is gaping inside, that is usually said to be like a Narasimha Salagrama. So there are some properties in Shastra which tell us how to classify these Salagramas. And then, so like this, and then for Ganesha, there is one Nadi called the Shona Nadi. So the Shila of the Shona Nadi are used to, the Shilas found in the Shona Nadi are said to be Ganesha. So in this way, for all five of these predominant Devatas, we have nadis that correspond to those Devatas and the Shilas therein. For Devi, the Suvarnamukhi Nadi. So the Shilas found therein are said to be Devi. So in this way, for the five Devatas, there are rivers prescribed for each, and the Shilas within are said to be forms of the Devata ready for worship. No Prana Pratishtha needed. And the beautiful thing is, if you mark these rivers on the map of Bharatavarsha, it will pretty much cover the entirety of India. Right. So, for example, Gandaki is at the north. The Narmada flows through a bit lower through the part of the country. Suvarnamukhi is through the south. The Shona Nadi is kind of on this side. So it's kind of a reminder that all these matas put together is India as a whole, is Bharatavarsha as a whole. So these five rivers are also there. So basically, you have Vigrahas, you have Yantras, and you have the Shilas. So these are the main forms of worship. And we talked about unity, that all devatas are forms of the same Paramatma. So we can actually see through this form of worship that this belief is enforced in us. Because as we said, regardless of which devata it is, the puja paddhati is the same. So the same puja format for Ramanavami is the same as it is for Krishnashtami, is the same as it is for Shivaratri, the same that it is for Navaratri, uh, same for Ganesha Chaturthi. Only thing is, as I said, the name of the devata and the maybe some names and things will change. And of course, each devata will have their own dravya that is special to them. For example, Ganesha Chaturthi, we'll put Durva, the that particular grass. Then for Shivaratri, obviously, Bhasma will have its own place. And for Shiva, we do not use Kunkuma. So you will use just the Shweta Akshata. You will not mix the Akshatas with the turmeric and the Kunkuma. Then for Devi, obviously, Kunkumarchana is very important. Then for Vishnu, we use Chandana a lot more than you do for other devatas, as well as more Alankara is usually done for Vishnu. So in the same way, there will be specifics for each puja that are particular to each devata. those particularities come with the particularity of the name and the form. But because it is the same Paramatma that is being worshipped throughout, the format of the puja is 90% the same throughout. And it is that kind of, for an unbiased mind, it will inculcate that feeling that whoever I have worshipped as Rama on Ramanavami is the same person that I'm worshipping as Krishna on Gokulashtami, Krishnashtami. That is the same person that I'm worshipping as Shiva on Shivaratri, and so on and so forth. Like if you just give a child this and you have him do that puja, for someone with an unbiased mind, this is the natural feeling that they'll be getting. So it is a very nice way of reinforcing that concept of unity and oneness, that it is one Paramatma that has taken upon so many forms to bless the bhaktas that are doing puja.
Lalithadityaji, talking about yantras, nowadays it's a trend that these yantras are sold and bought online. They are commercially available to all. It's also become a trend to keep these yantras, say, in offices, at homes, at public places. So, are there any rules specific or specifics to keep these yantras or vigrahas, as I said, at homes, offices, schools? Are there any specific methods of worship to be done for such yantras?
Yeah. So the four forms of worship that we talked about, the pure japa, vigraha, yantra, and the particular shila, all of these come with rules and regulations in Shastra. Wherever there is some force to be dealt with, there will always be rules. There is a reason why we have electrical wiring and insulators, why we have plug points, right? So anywhere where you are dealing with Shakti, you will inevitably have to follow rules if you wish to make the best use of that Shakti. So as we said, the size of the Vigrahas in some cases. So the size of the Vigraha is when you consistently worship it. If you are just keeping it in your house for adornment or because you like the way it looks, but you are not worshipping it, that is more than okay. But the Devata that you do Devata Archana to every day, that is the one where we talked about the size of that. For Japa, there are, generally speaking, two types of mantras: the Nama mantras, and then also the mantras that you need Upadesha for. Nama mantras are just general things like Shivaya Namaha, Vishnavaya Namaha, Srimatre Namaha. These kinds of things are just the name of the Devata with the Namaskara. Or some we say like Jai Jai Sri Rama Jai Rama Jai Jai Rama. These are all mantras that do not require a very formal initiation. You can just do japa of your favorite Devatas Nama in the Chaturtha Vibhakti, in the dative case, with the Namaha next to it. Ganapataye Namaha, Vishnave Namaha, Shivaya Namaha, Ramaya Namaha, Sri Ramaya Namaha, Krishnaya Namaha, whatever you want. Saraswatye Namaha, Durgaye Namaha, Lakshmi Namaha, in that way. If it is a different mantra, like Panchakshari mantra, Ashtakshari mantra, or Sri Vidya, Panchadashi, Shodashi, Bala mantra, Chindi mantra, Ganapati mantra, things like this, Santana Gopala mantra, all of these kinds of things, you will need initiation from a guru. And these days in PV, you will get those names scrolling saying, contact this person if you want a mantra. That is not a proper way of doing it. So in Shastra, what you have is that a guru should test the Shishya for a while. Because the thing is, when you get mantra padesha, that mantra you have to do at least one mala every day. For some mantras, it will actually be 3 malas a day. For example, Bala mantra and some Devi mantras like that, you will have to do 3 malas a day, minimum. So the thing is, if the Shishya does not follow that, do that, or does not follow the rules that an Upasaka should follow, the Shishya will get a dosha and the Guru will get a dosha for giving it to an unworthy Shishya. So, it is very important both for the receiver and the giver of the mantra that both sides are looked at. So, when you say, otherwise, there is no reason for Shastra to tell us the qualities of a Guru. Why does Shastra tell us the qualities? So that you can figure out who a proper Guru is. So, in the same way, when we find a Guru, we need to make sure, is he a proper Anushtata? Does he do his Upasana properly and regularly? Is he Satvik? Is he following Shastra or is he making stuff up? Is he giving himself leniencies? Or is he being proper about all the traditions and acharas and everything? These are all things that the Shishya needs to look at before going to a Guru. And the Guru also has to look at the same thing, the Shishya. Is the Shishya diligent? Does he really want this mantra? Is he sincere about his sadhana? Is he sattvic? All of this is what the Guru needs to look at. So this is not something that you can just call up and say, by the way, I'm looking for a mantra. You are not selling vegetables. It is a mantra. As you said, it is the Devata himself or the Devata itself that is being given. So when that is the case, the proper respect should be given to that. So that is the japa we have talked about Vigraha. And then when it comes to Shilas, they come, as we said, with the prana pratishtha, which means that if you have that in your house, you must worship it because the Devata is already sitting there. The prana pratishtha is as good as done, which means the Devata is sitting in that Banalinga or in that Salagrama. So you should be at least doing Naivedya every day. That is a rule for the Shilas. When it comes to the Yantras, this is slightly different because there are different ways of doing it. If you have the 3D form of the Yantra, like for example, for a Sri Chakra, it is called a Meru. So, wherein the Sri Chakra has 9 avaranas, each avarana will be raised and it will look like a Meru, like the mountain Meru, but the Sri Chakra itself is called a Meru. So, if you have that, again, same thing, you must be worshipping it. The other thing with Yantras is if it has been worshipped for a purpose, you can keep it in your house. Like, for example, some Yantras will be done for the sake of some Vastu dosha to go, or some, for example, for some Bhutochatana or something like that, you will get a Yantra done. That yantra will be worshipped for 40 days or so, and then you'll take it to your house. That does not need to be worshipped every day per se. You just keep it for that purpose. If it is also just like a normal drawing of a yantra, that is also okay. You can worship it or keep it. The thing is, if you start worshipping it, you have to keep worshipping it. That is the thing. So that is how it is for yantras in Shastra. And then the Shila we talked about. So these rules have to be followed. There is, especially when you're doing upasana and japa, those that things that we talked about, wherein making sure that you are going to the right guru, and the guru also making sure that he is testing the shishya. Like in Shastra, they say that you should test the shishya for almost a year before you decide whether he is worthy of upadesha or not. So obviously, that is just a general time span, but it means that the guru should look at the shishya for long enough to decide whether or not he is sincere and worthy or not. And if he is not, the guru can always guide the shishya saying, you do this until then. And then I will tell you when you are ready, kind of a thing. Which is why we'll see proper gurus, even if you ask for a mantra, they'll say, we'll say, come back later. You'll see, many gurus do that. That is for a reason. So, yeah.
I think that's a very valid and important point to note to all our viewers because these days you have a lot of opportunities, even online, where there are sellers or people who call for devotees to take mantras online and get initiated. So please use your discretion before you jump into such opportunities, because we just heard from Lalithadityaji that the dosha comes to both the guru as well as the shishya. So as shishyas, I think you should all use discretion.
And we will see that, for example, the Sringeri Jagat Guru himself, he has done Upadesha of, Acharya has done Upadesha of the Taraka mantra, the Sri Rama Jai Rama Jai Jai Rama. So that is a mantra that can be freely given like that. In the same way, when devotees requested that, Bhaktas requested, Shishyas requested that they have something that they could worship Shankaracharya by. We know that Jagat Guru Sri Sri Bharatirtha Mahasannidhanam Varu gave us the Namah Shankaraya mantra. And this too is not a mantra that Acharya came up with out of nowhere. Acharya is, we say in the Birudavalli, Vaidika Marga Pravartaka. So in the Rudra, you get Namah Shankaraya cha, Mayaskaraya cha, Namah Shivaya cha, Shivataraya cha, where incidentally, where the Namah Shivaya mantra is found. That is where the Namah Shivaya comes from in Veda. And in the same way, Namah Shivaya on its own can be done without any particular initiation. But this Namah Shivaya, Namah Shankaraya mantra also, Acharya has initiated many bhaktas into, because it is that kind of a mantra wherein there is no limitation on who can or should do it. There is no limitation based on caste, creed, gender. There is age. There is no limitation on that at all. So the Jagat Guru has given it, and everyone can freely do japa of that mantra. So in that sense, and some people are asking then, Acharya has done upadesha of this. I have seen the video. So does that count as Acharya doing it to me? So for this mantra, yes, it certainly counts. If it is some other mantra wherein there are more rules and regulations, you should do it in muddy or something like that is there, then by all means, yes, you need to be in person. There is no such thing as a video call upadesha. That is by no means proper. But for people who are looking for some mantra, the Jagat Guru has given us these two: the Sri Rama Jai Rama Jai Jai Rama and Namah Shankaraya.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
are these rules also applicable to stotras? Like we often see chanting of Lalita Sahasranama, Saundarya Lahari, or even reciting Sundarakanda. So these kinds of stotras and kavyas is an initiation required?
Yeah. So for some texts, there is both a way to read it that does not require initiation. There is also a way to read it when you have initiation. For example, Lalita Sahasranama. For those that have Sri Vidya, there is a particular way that Lalita Sahasranama is read. For those that do not have Sri Vidya, you are very much free to read it normally. So even that goes for Vishnu Sahasranama also. So basically, the general principle is, if it is in an Itihasa or a Purana, anyone can read it. If it is in an Itihasa or a Purana, and it is not a mantra, that is also there. Like I think we said last time that Devi Bhagavata will have some mantras in it, or Srimad Bhagavata has some mantras in it. Those mantras can be read when you are doing Parayana of um, the text. So if you're doing Devi Bhagavata Parayana, yes, you can read through those mantras, but you cannot take up that mantra and do japa of it on your own. As part of Parayana of the whole text, you can read that mantra, but you should not use it on its own. But generally speaking, the point of Itihasas and Puranas is to give something that can be read by everyone, regardless of, as you said, regardless of caste, creed, gender, age, and whatnot. So, for example, a good example of this is the Chandi Saptashati, Devi Mahatmya. So, as we know, this is a very important text in Devi Upasaka. So, if you have that Chandi Navakshari, or if you have Sri Vidya, then you read the kavacha. There are some kavachas before and after, and some anganyasas and all that before and after the Devi Saptashati. If you only if you have that upasana, are you supposed to do all of that? Otherwise, for a normal person, you can just read through the 700 shlokas because it is part of the Purana. You just read it. It's like doing Parayana of a part of the Purana. So there is no limit on that. However, there is a limit on doing it with those nyasas before and after, then doing puja to the Grantha. That prakriya is reserved for those people who have upasana of that particular upasana. So this is kind of generally, what do you say? It is a benchmark kind of thing. If you are just reading it through as a Purana, you can happily read it through. If you are going to treat it as a mantra, then there will be rules that apply, kind of a thing. So that is the way that it is. One more thing is kavachas. Kavachas are a very particular type of stotra which are intended for protection. So the way of kavachas also is, kavachas will require upadesha from a guru. That all. So I think there are maybe one or two exceptions, but generally speaking, kavachas, for example, Rama Raksha Stotra, that is generally freely done. But generally speaking, kavachas need upadesha. They are treated almost as a mantra. Other stotras, you can freely do parayana without worrying about any of this. For example, Bhagavatpada has written this Shiva Panchakshara Nakshatramala Stotra, wherein in 27 shlokas, each having 4 lines, the last word of each line will be Namah Shivaya. So altogether, the entire stotra will have Namah Shivaya coming 108 times. That is why Acharya had selected that stotra for the recent event. And that that you can freely do Parayana. Same thing with Kalyana Vrishtishtava. So the first letters will spell out the Panchadashi mantra. So you can happily read through that without any rules or regulations. That is, you can happily do Parayana of that as a stotra. So there is no problem in reading those stotras, and you will get the benefit of the mantra. That the reason why Bhagavatpada wrote such stotras is so that everyone can get the benefit of the mantra without those without the severity of the niyamas that you need to follow if you have that mantra upadesha. Bhagavatpada has also written this Dakshinamurti Suvarnamala Stotra, wherein the first letter of each shloka in that stotra spells out the letters of the Medha Dakshinamurti mantra. So if you do Parayana of that stotra, it is as good as doing japa of the Medha Dakshinamurti mantra. But for example, if you want to do japa of the Medha Dakshinamurti mantra, you have to take bath, you have to be in clean clothes, muddy has to be there, then you have to do all of that. Anganyasa, Karanyasa, you have to have Upadesha first of all. So, but to read the stotra, none of that is needed. You can just happily read the stotra because it is embedded with the letters of the mantra. It is as good as getting the benefit of that mantra. And one more beauty of the Sanskrit language is, we say, right, amantram aksharam nasti. Each letter on its own is a mantra. It is just such a divine language that even if it is a normal stotra, if you read it with that bhava that, this is what I'm worshipping Bhagavan with, or that this is something very divine, that bhavana is not unfounded, because the language itself is divine. Those letters have some Shakti embedded within them, the letters on their own. So, each letter has a devata behind it. They're called the Matrika Devatas. We get in letters, Matrika Varna Rupini. So, these Matrika Devatas are the Adhisthana Devatas of each letter. So, these letters themselves are mantras on their own. And that is why Aksharabhyas is such a big deal. It is not like you just write something, you write your name in, you sign your name in that rice and you're done. We are giving the child these aksharas. We are giving them these aksharas that when combined become these mantras. And these aksharas that are akin to mantras on their own. That is why Aksharabhyasa is such an important event even for a child. So, it is not like, oh, that stotra is different, this stotra is different. All stotras composed in the Sanskrit language, have that purity inherently in them. So, if that bhavana is there, no doubt it will yield fruit. Yeah. There is a shloka also, Yadrishi bhavana tatra siddhir bhavati tadrishi. When it comes to doctors, gurus, and mantras, whatever bhavana you approach with, assuming it is a proper doctor and a proper guru and a proper mantra, whatever bhavana you approach them with is what will determine how much you get back out of it.
Like,
So, for example, if you approach the guru saying he is just another human being like me, that is all you will get back. If you approach the guru saying, this is Bhagavan who can guide me, obviously what you will get back will be Bhagavan who guides you.
Adityaji, you spoke about the various stotras that praise Bhagavan. So the question that comes up to my mind is, why do we need to praise Bhagavan by reciting these stotras or mantras? When Bhagavan is devoid of raga dvesha, why are we required to say these stotras to praise him and make him grant our wishes?
It's a fair question, and it applies to pujas as well. It is not just the stotra. It's like if Bhagavan does not need anything, then why does he need us to worship him before he does anything for us? Um, so it is, we should not look at this like you go to someone for a loan and you have to praise them and make them like you before you ask for a loan. There is a one shloka in the Gita, Name dveshyosti na priyaha, samoham sarvabhuteshu, Name dveshyosti na priyaha, ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mayite teshu chapyaham. There is no one that is particularly dear to me and no one that is not dear to me. It is just that um, a bhakta has done something for which he needs to get the karma phala. It is that simple. In the sense, and the example that Bhagavatpada gives there also in the Bhashya is that, first of all, in the Brahmasutra Bhashya, Bhagavatpada gives that Ishwarastu Parjanyavad Drashtavya. Ishwara is like the rain. Whatever you plant is what the rain will come and water, and then it will grow. You cannot cry that you have gotten a lemon tree after planting a lemon seed and say that why did that rain give me this? So it is, asking why Bhagavan needs to be praised is like asking, why do I have to wait for the rain to water my crop, kind of a thing. That is one thing. The other thing is, everyone does karma. So then what is the need for special pujas? Everyone does something or the other. So there, the example that Bhagavad gives in the Gita Bhashya is that it is like fire. So you are cold and there is a fire in front of you. You cannot complain that the fire has not removed your coldness if you have not gone close to it. You cannot stand 10 meters away from the fire and say that, hey, you see that fire? Someone is sitting close to the fire. Someone is standing some 20 meters away from the fire. He cannot say that, hey, that fire is partial. That fire has raga towards that person and dvesha towards me. It is just that the closer you get to Bhagavan, the more that you get out of that relationship intrinsically. It is not that Bhagavan is actually sitting there and planning what to do with you. It is just the natural fruit of what you get back. Just as when you go close to the fire, it is not like the fire has to do something to get rid of your cold. You're going close to the fire is what gets rid of your coldness. So in the same way, then Bhagavan is Sarva Vyapaka. So what does it mean to get close to Bhagavan? It means getting closer to always thinking of Bhagavan, always, and getting closer to understanding who Bhagavan is. That is one thing in that. How do you gauge whether your worship is going in the right way for your sadhana or not? A simple question is, you look back. Has my understanding of Bhagavan changed due to my sadhana? It is a very simple question to ask oneself. Because obviously the relationship that a child has with Bhagavan, a 3-year-old child has with Bhagavan, it will be very different from even that which an 8-year-old child will have. in terms of God. And if you mature properly, then it should be very different from what you have when you're 25 or 30. So, a very easy way to look at whether my sadhana is useful or not is I am doing some sadhanas today. I was doing something some 2-3 years back. Has how I understand Bhagavan or understand myself too, for that matter, has that changed? Or do I still think that he is some magic man in the sky that rains down boons when I pray to him? Uh, what we mean to be closer to Bhagavan is being closer to understanding Bhagavan. And that understanding, the first step to that is, as we said, these stotras and all. Because stotras, while obviously one effect is to praise Bhagavan, a greater value that is there in stotras is they are the first step to understanding Bhagavan. For example, Vishnu Sahasranama. Why did if the point of the stotra is just to praise Bhagavan and nothing else, why did Bhagavatpada feel the need to write a bhashya for it? It is because the first step is praising Bhagavan. The second step is using that stotra to understand Bhagavan. So the word Vishnu conveys something about the nature of Paramatma. The word Vishwam conveys something about the nature of Paramatma. Bhuta Bhavya Bhavat Prabhu conveys something about Paramatma. So first you use and we read both. Because as we said, I think earlier also, you cannot expect to go into Jnana Sadhana from day one. But this stotra will help you to do that gradually. You need Bhagavan's Anugraha to do this. And what do we mean when we say you need Bhagavan's Anugraha? When you do anything, there are always intangibles, right? There, who, for example, who you are born to, the situations you grow up in, the people you run into, yeah, even you get a job, what your boss is like. These are all things that you can't control. These are all out of your control. Who controls those? As we said, what is Bhagavan? Bhagavan is the person that arranges all the karmas. Right? He arranges how people meet, when they meet, what happens, what they experience, all of that. So when you pray to Bhagavan for something like this, what happens is the natural response, as you said, like the fire is, the natural response is those things will be arranged in a way that is conducive to you. You will still have to experience your punyas and papas. It is just that losing 5 rupees is written for you. You would much rather lose 5 rupees when you have 10 rupees than when you have only 5 rupees. So, that arrangement will be changed. Or getting 5 rupees. Getting 5 rupees is much more important to someone that has 0 rupees than it is to Ambani. Right. So, the karmas will be arranged in a way that is conducive to your sadhana. And that is why Bhagavan says also in Gita, when a yogi or a sadhaka, Arjuna asks, right, if he passes away before, Kachinno Bhaya Vibhrashtas Chinnabhrameva Nishyati. He asks, like a cloud that is blown by the wind, is his sadhana not lost to him? Right? So if you have done some sadhana in this life, obviously, Aneka Janna Samsiddha, it takes many lives to attain fruition. So what happens if you lose, if you are lost in the, if you pass in the middle? That is why Bhagavan says that will never happen. The Shuchinam Shrimatam Gehe Yoga Bhrashto Abhijayate. He will be born in a house of Shuchinam, people that follow proper achara, Shrimatam, people who are reasonably well off in the sense that they have enough that this person will not have to give up sadhana. They don't even have to be rich per se. But he will be born in such a place that his sadhana will continue. So, that all depends on what we do. So, in that sense, we pray to Bhagavan to guide our sadhana. All the intangibles need to be taken care of. And as well as, of course, everything that we need in this world, enough money to live properly, proper good health, supportive family, all of that, of course, is necessary. But when we are talking about sadhana, this is what we mean in the sense that these stotras give us the, something to dwell on when we try to think about Bhagavan and Tattva and all of that, as well as they are a mode for us to secure Bhagavan's anugraha that this sadhana progresses uninhibited. So, in all, the point is that we are not doing Bhagavan a favor with these stotras. It is a favor that we are doing to ourselves. Right? It is like a bucket that goes into a well and comes out with water inside it. These stotras are those buckets that we can use to, help ourselves to Bhagavan's Shakti. That is why the word Anugraha also, Granhati means to take. Anugraha means to follow and take. Wherever Bhagavan is, you follow there and receive something. That is what the word Anugraha literally means. So, in that sense, these stotras are not to please Bhagavan because he is somehow angry. Because see, we have never said you're all sinners. you're all papatmas. You all need to be uplifted. This all will happen for you. You're all cast down by nature. That is not it. The Upanishad, Shrunvantu Amritasya Putraha. That is how the Upanishad, it says, listen, children of immortality. That is how the Upanishad treats us. So, it is in no case is it like God has, his fury, he casts his fury upon mankind. That is not in our Sampradaya at all. Bhagavan is the most, what do you say, impartial. So, it is not also that he is devoid of mercy. He is impartial as well as merciful. So, in that sense, Bhagavan is Bhagavan. What we want from him is what we take and get from him. Right? That is you. And the kind of a question to this is people ask, when so many Rakshasas do tapas for Shiva, why does he keep giving them boons? Shiva has no choice. Some people will say that is why Vishnu does not give boons to these Rakshasas. Shiva gives these boons. So Shiva does not have discretion. These are all nonsense. These are what people say if they don't know what they are talking about. Shiva gives boons because he has no choice. Why did Shiva give? Because that person prayed to Shiva and not to Vishnu. So when you pray to Shiva and you have done the tapas, it is like you have a check. You go to the bank and you say, I want to deposit this. He will not say, I will not deposit because I don't like you. He has to deposit it. So in that sense, if you do some anusthana, you are entitled to the fruit of that. That is all that our pujas and japas are. The only thing is our bhavana should not be like, well, I have done this japa, now give me this. If you treat it like that, as you said, whatever you feel is what you. So if you treat it as a barter system, it will be a barter system. If you treat it as this is a sadhana for me, see, that is why these are all called sadhanas. So what is a sadhana? A means to an end. It is a means to an end for us. It is not anything for Bhagavan. So if we do that, Bhagavan will bestow upon us whatever it is that we should get. So it is not like we have to propitiate Bhagavan, we have to please him, give him sweets or something, and then he will do, this is not a bribe or something. So that is what we mean when we say these stotras.
Right. I think that's a beautiful explanation to all our viewers and especially the youngsters or the kids of today, which perfectly answers why we need to pray to God. It's not really to praise God and get something out of it. It is more to understand Bhagavan and make our relationship with Bhagavan better each day. Mentioned about Puranas, there are several Puranas that glorify a particular deity in our Sanatana Dharma. So, as a devotee or a seeker of truth, how are we to reconcile these seemingly contradicting Puranas?
Right? For example, we have the Vishnu Purana, the Matsya Purana, the Varaha Purana, all of which, and such Puranas which talk about Vishnu. Then you have the Markandeya Purana, Brahmanda Purana, and of course Devi Bhagavata, which glorify Devi. Then you have the Ganesha Purana, Mudgala Purana, which talk about Ganesha. Then the most Puranas actually end up glorifying Shiva in terms of pure numbers. Out of the 18, the biggest number go to Shiva. So you have the Shiva Purana, Linga Purana, all of these, the Skanda Purana, all of these are all talking about Shiva. So there are various Puranas that glorify various Devatas. Now, the question comes that Vishnu Purana says that Vishnu is supreme. Shiva Purana says that Shiva is the supreme. Then Devi Bhagavata says that Devi is supreme, etc. So, how do we resolve this apparent contradiction? The easiest, simplest, and correct answer is to say that these are all the same person. So, it is the same person that is supreme everywhere. It is only if Shiva is different from Vishnu that these two Puranas contradict each other. If you just say Shiva and Vishnu are the same person, then yeah, Shiva is supreme, Vishnu is supreme, correct, because Shiva is Vishnu. So both are, so it is the same entity that is supreme. It is, that is the simplest and the correct answer. And that is why it is this interpretation of the Puranas alone that remains respectful to Vyasa Maharshi. Because otherwise, what you are ending up saying is that Vyasa Maharshi wrote some Puranas glorifying one Devata and that he lied in all of the other Puranas. Or that you are either ascribing that lie to Vyasa, that Vyasa lied, or you are saying that Vyasa is incompetent because he did not make himself clearly known. So you have to ascribe either one of these two things. If you do not accept that all devatas glorified in the Puranas are the same, and clearly, if you say that, then you do not deserve to be in Sanatana Dharma, because we owe this entirety to Vyasa Maharshi. So if you say, for example, that, just let us say that you say that only the Shiva Puranas are correct, and that all the other Puranas that talk about Devi and Vishnu are incorrect, then it means that you are accepting that Vyasa Maharshi has written something that is incorrect. Or you are saying that Vyasa Maharshi actually meant to say that Shiva is supreme there also, but he just did not write it clearly enough. Both of which are things that no one should dare to say about Vyasa Maharshi. Now, the usual response to this is that is not the case. In the Padma Purana, we see this division of Puranas into Sattvika, Rajasa, and Tamasa Puranas. So the Sattvika Puranas take you to Moksha, the Rajasa Puranas give you Swarga, and the Tamasa Puranas send you to Naraka. This is there in the Purana itself. And which Puranas are which are also told. So clearly, those are meant to, the Sattvika Puranas are meant to take Sattvik people up. The Tamasa Puranas are meant to cast down Tamasic people. Rajasic Puranas just exist to give people whatever bhogas they want. This is the usual response. The simplest answer to this is, there is also one more classification of the Sattvika, Rajasic, Tamasa Puranas in the Linga Purana, wherein the list is completely flipped. Yeah, so there is no, so in the Puranas that glorify Vishnu, we'll say that all the Vishnu Puranas are Sattvik, all the Shiva Puranas are Tamasic. In the Linga Purana, it is the exact opposite. All the Shiva Puranas are Sattvik and all the Vishnu Puranas are Tamasic. So it literally just becomes a game of which one do you take into account first. Someone that reads the Linga Purana first will say, okay, so the Padma Purana is Tamasic, or some other Vishnu Purana is Tamasic. So the classification of Puranas therein also is Tamasic. Someone who opens the Padma Purana first will say, oh, so the Shiva Puranas are Tamasic, so whatever classification in there is also meant for Tamasic people. So there is no proper, cohesive thing. Whereas the proper answer is just that whatever you are reading will be glorified. It is that simple. You should not be reading something thinking, hey, they said something else there, no? So how does that compare? So that you don't think that, you say that whatever you're reading right now is the greatest thing that possibly exists. Everything else is secondary. So it is to glorify what the reader is reading at that moment that this classification of these Puranas exists, to just show the reader that what you're reading right now is some very sattvic great thing. This is what we call in Shastra as an Arthavada. It is something that is just meant to teach Shresthatha. It is not meant to be taken literally in terms of, this is grade A material, this is grade B material, this gets 60 marks in an exam, that gets 50 marks. It is not meant to teach that at all. Because there are so many different classifications in different Puranas about what is Sattvic and what is Rajasic. So, and the other thing is that it also depends on how you approach the Puranas. Because see, the foundation of our Dharma, as you said, is in the Vedas. So the Itihasas and Puranas are meant to echo what the Veda tells. And when it comes to philosophy, it is the Upanishads. In the Vedas, it is the Upanishad portion. So the Itihasas and Puranas are meant to echo the Upanishad, which means that you should understand the Upanishads first and then seek to interpret Itihasas and Puranas. Otherwise, how can you say that these are echoing that without knowing what the actual sound is? It is like saying, I heard the echo before the actual sound. Right? That is not possible. So, uh, that is why there is a shloka also. Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Samupabrahmayet Vibhetyalpashrutad Vedaha Mamayam Prataredite or Pratarishyati. Both pathas are there. What this means is, the Itihasas and Puranas are meant to echo the Veda or are meant to explain the Veda. And the Veda fears someone, fears in the sense that the Veda is scared of someone who is not properly educated. Alpashrutat, someone who is not properly educated, saying that he will interpret me in the wrong way. Now, this is usually meant to, it is usually explained in the sense that someone who does not know Smriti and Purana properly, or Itihas and Purana properly, will not be able to interpret Veda properly. Veda will fear such a person. But if you look at the actual shloka, what does it mean? Alpa Shrutad Vedaha. The Veda will fear someone saying that he will explain me the wrong way. Which means if someone looks at only the Itihasas and Puranas and does not know Veda, what will he do? He will explain whatever comes to mind and he'll end up missing the point of Veda. Veda will fear that person also. So, what the system of Advaita did that is so beautiful is, we interpret the Upanishads as the Upanishads. We will not say wherever they say Paramatma, they actually mean this thing from the Puranas. Wherever they say Brahman, they actually mean this thing from the Puranas. We don't say that. We'll interpret the Upanishads on their own. And that is how you arrive at the fact that Paramatma is Nirguna and Nirakara. Because in the 10 main, the Dashopanishads, nowhere does it say that Bhagavan is Chaturbahu, Shankachakra, Tirunama, Lakshmi is pressing his feet. It does not say that anywhere. Nowhere does it say that Bhagavan has 3 eyes and Bhasma and Damaru and is dancing all the time. It doesn't talk about that at all. It talks about, as we said in the earlier episodes, how this Srishti came from Bhagavan. Bhagavan is Sarva Vyapaka. These kinds of things are discussed in Upanishads. Or Upasanas. Bhagavan is Paramatma is meditated upon as a golden figure in the orb of the in the orb of the sun, or meditated upon as a golden person in the orb of the eye, or things like this are given, or as within the Hridaya Pundarika. These kinds of things are given. It does not talk about forearms and all that. There are other Upanishads, for example, some Gopalatapani or Ramatapani or Rama Rahasya Upanishad, where it does talk about Brahman as, Rama or Krishna or Shiva. But on the other, they also have Jabala Upanishad, Kalabhairava Upanishad, Rudra Upanishad, which talks about Brahman as Shiva. So if you look at those Upanishads, you will fall into the same problem as the Puranas, because you will have some Upanishads talking about Brahman as Shiva, some Upanishads talking about Brahman as Ganesha, Atharva Shirsha Upanishad. Tameva pratyaksham brahmasi, tameva pratyaksham tattvamasi, tumeva kevalam kartasi, tumeva kevalam dhartasi, tumeva sarvam hartasi, tumeva khalvidam, all the tvam sakshad atmasi nityam. So here Ganesha is obviously shown to be Parabrahman. So, and then you will have the Narayana Atharva Shirsha, Athanitya Narayanaha, Brahma Narayanaha, Shivascha Narayanaha, Chakrascha Narayanaha. This is there. Then then Antarbahishya Sarvam Vyapya Narayana Sthitaha. So that is called Narayana Sukta. Nowhere in that Sukta do you have Chaturbahu and all that. Then later on, you have some Rudra mantras also. You do not really find a form of Shiva anywhere in those. So, in this way, in the Upanishad portion, I'm not talking about the mantras of the Samhita portion. For example, Rudra comes in the Samhita. There you will get Nilalohita and Trinetra and all of that you will get there. And as you said earlier, for Vishnu also, there you will get this Trivikrama and all of that you will get there. The Matsyavatara Katha with Manu and all of that comes in the Shatapatha Brahmana. So that is a Samhita portion. But when we are talking about the Upanishads, you do not, in the Dashopanishads, you do not find, the form of Vishnu or the form of Shiva or Devi with the Trishulas, Mahishasura Mardini, or Ganesha with the elephant trunk and all. There are other Upanishads which talk about that. But the Dashopanishads, the main ones that we rely on the most, you will not find those. So someone who analyzes these Upanishads will come to the conclusion that Bhagavan is without name and form and takes upon name and form. So then by the time he comes to the Puranas, his interpretation is so easy, in the sense that the Saguna form is the form of that Nirguna entity. And the glorification of supremacy is to the Nirguna quality. It is not to the name and the form. So for him it is very clear. The problem comes when you want to interpret the Upanishads as talking about some particular deity, that now you have to reverse engineer. So if you want to say that, no, the Upanishads talk about only Shiva, or the Upanishads talk about only Vishnu, that you have to run backwards. Because what you want is not here, it is there. So now what do you end up doing? You end up saying, okay, so what I will do is, I will first pick Shiva Purana. So Shiva Purana talks about Shiva as supreme. So now I will apply this to the Upanishads, saying wherever they talk about the Paramatma, it must be talking about Shiva because Shiva is supreme. And any other thing I see that contradicts me is tamasic. Same thing goes for Vishnu. So whatever, I will pick Vishnu Purana and Padma Purana. And whatever I see there, Vishnu is supreme, that is all that I will look at now. And I will interpret the Upanishads based on that. Anything that says that anyone other than Vishnu is supreme is now immediately thrown into the tamasic category. You will fall into all of this nonsense if you go the wrong way. So, what the easiest way to look at the Puranas is clear that Paramatma is Nirguna. Right. So, Paramatma it is clear that Paramatma is that Shuddha Chaitanya. That Chaitanya takes upon various forms, as we said earlier in the last episode, to do anugraha to various bhaktas. So, it is that Paramatma that is glorified as supreme, not the name and the form. That is the simplest thing to do. And that is why we have all of these forms that are combinations of Devatas. We have Ardhanarishwara showing that Shiva and Shakti are not separate. You have Harihara in the Puranas itself. So, in the Vayu Purana, Vayu is praying to Shiva as Harihara. There is an entire stotra there, wherein Vayu praises Shiva like this and then tells how Shiva told Vishnu, Vayu is telling all of this, that, the Ardhanarishwara Swarupa, Aparsham Aham Mahan Mahyam Shyamam Srivatsa Lakshanam, then the other part is Tvaham. So all of these shlokas are all there. I am Purusha, Vishnu, you are Prakriti. Shiva is telling, I am the Purusha, you are Prakriti. We are all, in the same thing. And then that roop of Harihara is also given. The Harihara mantra is there in Tantra also. There is a mantra for Harihara and everything. So the reason why we have these forms is to remind us that, these are all one form of the same Paramatma. These are all different forms of the same Paramatma. So, as long as you keep saying that one form or one name is better than the others, you will forever be trying to play catch up in making everything make sense. It is easier if you understand Vyasa's Hridaya. What is Vyasa's Hridaya? Vyasa's Hridaya is what the Upanishads tell us. It is, without looking at this, it is very clear what the Upanishads are telling us. Right? If you give someone just the Upanishads and say, what are these talking about? These 10 Upanishads, Isha Kyana Kata Prashna Munda Mandoki Tittiri Aitareya Chandogya Brihadaranyaka. If you give someone just these 10 Upanishads and you say, you tell me what the Upanishads are talking, what is this Paramatma that the Upanishads are talking about? None of them will come back to you saying Parvati Pati Ishwara Lakshmi Pati Narayana. It is not possible. Only if you look at one section of the Puranas out of context, can you come back and say, they are talking about only Vishnu, they are talking about only Shiva, they are talking about only Devi. Only if you look at the Puranas out of context, one part out of context, will you be able to make that statement. So there is no contradiction at all in the Puranas, which is also why in the Puranas that glorify Vishnu, you will see Vishnu state that I am not different from Shiva. It is there clearly in Vishnu Purana. Um, Purusha avidya mohitatmanaha purushaha bhinna darshanaha bhedam pashyanti. Vishnu tells this to Shiva. Those people who have gotten moha from avidya, they will see a difference between you and me. This is in Vishnu Purana. Vishnu tells this himself. And same thing is clear in Shiva Puranas also. Shiva says clearly to Vishnu that we are the same. So in Harivamsha, which is a itihasa, and therefore actually one step above the Puranas in terms of its validity. So it is Shruti, Smriti, that is where itihasas fall, and then Purana. So itihasas are always more prabala than the Puranas. There, in that Harivamsha, Shiva tells Vishnu one thing, that there is no bheda between you and me, shabdataha arthataha. This is a very strong statement to make, because it means that in the last episode we talked about how some names of Shiva and Vishnu overlap. Yeah. It means that it is not just the names that overlap, the meanings of the names also overlap. Shabdataha bhedo nasti, arthatopi bhedo nasti. There is no meaning in what the names mean also. So it is not, so some people say that these names all belong to Vishnu. Vishnu gives those devatas their names. Vishnu allows those devatas to be referred to by their names. Or same thing the Shiva Bhaktas will say. So these names all belong to Shiva. Shiva gives those names to other devatas that they may use them. That is not the case. So what does it mean if the name and the meaning apply to both? It means that that entity is the same. Right. It is, say, for example, we said that the word Vishnu means he who pervades. So now the word Vishnu applies to Shiva and Vishnu, because Namataha there is no Bheda. Now Arthataha also there is no Bheda, which means the meaning of the word Vishnu means he who pervades, which means that he who pervades applies to Shiva and Vishnu, which means there are not two entities that pervade. It is the same entity that pervades. This is there clearly in the Mahabharata also. And in that same thing, the Harivamsha is a killer part of the Mahabharata. And same in the Harivamsha also, you have Shivaya Vishnu Rupaya, Shiva Rupaya Vishnave, Shivasya Hridayam Vishnuho. And there is also Yatha Nabhedam Pashyami, Tena Tau Dishata Shivam. That is also there in the in that Harivamsha itself. As they will get punya from doing puja of Hari or Hara, as long as they do not see Bheda between Hari and Hara. That is also there. So it is very clear that the Puranas emphatically state that all forms of Bhagavan belong to the same Paramatma. It is that Paramatma that takes upon all those forms. That is why also, just we have talked about Hari and Hara, Devi also. So if you look at the form of Devi in Chindi Saptashati, in the end when she is fighting Shumbha and Shumbha, you have the Saptamatrikas that come. So Vaishnavi, Maheshwari, Kaumari, Indrani. So what is the point of all of that? The Shakti is there anyhow in all of them. But if you see, Devi says, Ekaivaham, Ditya ka mama para. Who is there that is beside me? There is no one else beside me. Mama apara Ditya ka. Who is it that you can show that is different from me? And so she manifests herself as Brahmani with all the insignia of Brahma, as Vaishnavi with all the insignia of Vishnu, as Maheshwari with all the insignia of Shiva, as Indrani with all the insignia of Indra, as Kaumari with all the insignia of Kartikeya. And then uh, basically that Shumbha or Nishumbha, the one of, whoever is left in the end, he says, "You are cheating. I am alone, and you are getting so many people to fight me. Kaumari is different, Maheshwari is different, Brahmi is different. So many people are coming to fight me." So these people who say that there is a difference between Hari and Hara, who say that there is a difference between Hara and Devi, there is a difference between Devi and Ganapati, are in the category of Shumbha Nishumbha. Whatever drishti that he has, that is the same thing, because that is exactly what he said. He said Kaumari is different, Brahmi is different, Brahmi is different, Maheshwari is different. And then Devi says, what nonsense are you talking? Vitiyaka mamapara. There is no one besides me. And then all those Shaktis that had originally emanated from her come back into her, showing that what? These are all various forms that I have taken. Whether it be the form of Brahma Shakti, the form of Shiva Shakti, the form of Vishnu Shakti, they are all my Shakti alone. The Shakti is common. It is just the name and the form that is changing. You apply the same thing to Paramatma. It is Paramatma that manifests as Brahma, as Vishnu, as Maheshwara, as Ganesha, as Kumara. It is the name and the form that is changing. The tattva of Paramatma is the same. So the Puranas are all very clear on this. It is just that you have to have the patience and the open mind to read them that way. You should not go into the Puranas having fixed your mind on some particular name and form and said, this is what they must be saying. So this is all that I will choose to say. You just have to keep an open mind and see it for what it is. It is that simple. So there is no contradiction in the Puranas at all.
Yeah. So all Puranas, whether it's Vishnu Purana,
All
Shiva
Puranas glorify Paramatma.
Purana, that's
That is it. And in different names and forms. That is the simplest way of talking about it.
So that was a very comprehensive explanation to say that all Puranas glorify the same entity, the Paramatma. So earlier you mentioned about Adi Shankaracharya in his works. He's also referred to as Shanmata Sthapanacharya. What does it clearly mean? And were these Shanmatas pre-existing before, or was he the establisher of them?
So, yes, we get the name Shanmata Sthapanacharya, both referring to Shankaracharya and as well as in the Birudavali of his parampara in the four Chaturamnaya Pithas. So, the word Shanmata Sthapanacharya means the Acharya who did Sthapana, who established the Shanmatas, the six matas. The six certainly predate him because Bhagavatpada talks about Vaishnavas and Pashupatas in his Brahmasutra Bhashya. So, in the Tarkapada, he refutes the view of both the Vaishnava school, which back then was called the Bhagavata school, and the Pashupata school as well. So these, at least textually in the Brahmasutra Bhashya itself, we can see that that existed in his time clearly, and as well as we have the Agamas, for example, the Pancharatra Agamas and these kinds of texts also, the Shaiva Agamas and the Shakta Agamas. These all do predate Bhagavatpada. So then why do we call him Shanmata Sthapanacharya if he's not the one that established? So there are two ways of establishing something. You can be the first one to say it, or you can be the one that establishes it properly. For example, there is a, what do you say? You have planted some pole in the ground, but over time the pole loosens and it starts swinging around. You can then re-establish it. That is also called establishing one. So what Bhagavatpada did was, in due course of time, due to human error, that is a raga dvesha, these matas kind of lost their way, and their puja vidhanas all became kind of marred by tamasic practices. So, for example, in Shaktas, we all know that there are some occult practices that involve some unsavory methods, such as using alcohol or meat or certain other activities that are not sattvic, that are used to worship Devi. In the same thing, of course, within Shaiva sects, there are some practices that are not so sattvic. Same thing goes for some Vaishnava sects also. There are definitely some practices that are not savory at all. Same thing in Ganesha, the worship of Uchishta Ganapati had devolved greatly, and honestly, even after that, also devolved into some very tamasic practices. So all of this had happened. So what Bhagavatpada did was, wherever he did yatra across the country, he traveled up and down the whole of Bharatavarsha thrice, as per the Shankara Digvijaya. What he did was, wherever he came across these tamasic practices, he removed them and ensured that these worship was done in a sattvic way. And Bhagavatpada was very meticulous about the way he did this. And he was very particular that this happened everywhere. So, for example, in the Shankara Digvijaya, we see that when Bhagavatpada went to Kanchi, right? So Bhagavatpada did not stay in Kanchi for very long. It was like a come and a go kind of a thing. But even there, in that temple, there were Sri Vidya was not being used the right way. So there, Bhagavatpada stopped there, revised the system, did Sri Chakra Pratishtha, which is why in the name, in the Ashtotra Shatranamali, we get Kancham Sri Chakra Raja Pratishtha. We get that name in the Ashtotra Shankaracharya also. That he did Pratishtha of Sri Chakra in Kanchi, cleaned up the Archana Paddhati there, the worship there, and left. So, it is not even, for example, in Badari, Bhagavatpada put a Pitha there. But it is not just putting the Pitha there. Bhagavatpada there, the Vigraha of Vishnu had been thrown into one Kunda, one Narada Kunda there, and that Vigraha was not there. So, Bhagavatpada went in, got that out, re-established it, and ensured that puja was done properly there. Same thing in Jagannath. So, even the practice of how, there also the practice had been broken. And in fact, the process of how to identify the timber that will be used to construct the next Murti of Jagannath, that is followed to this day, that intricate process was set in place by Bhagavatpada. So, and also, of course, here in Shringeri, the establishment of Devi. So, in all of these places where Bhagavatpada put the Pithas, Bhagavatpada had done some samskarana of, the puja vidhana there. And also, for example, in Tirupati, Bhagavatpada established the Dhanakarshana yantra there. In Akhilandeshwari, Devi was very ugra there. So, there he did the Tatanka Pratishtha, which then thereafter was by right done by the Shringeri Jagadgurus, and then of course many things happened historically after that. And then you have Akhilandeshwari, then in Sri Shaila also Bhagavatpada worshipped Shiva there for a while. So in all of these different places, you see, so not just in the four Pithas, but also places where Bhagavatpada was just passing through. Kanchi, Akhilandeshwari, then this Jambukeshwara, and then Sri Shaila, all of these places where Bhagavatpada was just passing through. Even there, Bhagavatpada made sure that the Archana Vidhana there was Mukambika. Mukambika also actually ties back to Bhagavatpada, and that Bhagavatpada took care of the Archana Vidhana there. So, all of these places, Bhagavatpada has very properly and nicely reformed. So, what we mean when we say Bhagavatpada is Shanmata Sthapanacharya is that he cleaned them up from being tamasic, made sure they were sattvic, and also by re-establishing Advaita. Advaita was there before Bhagavatpada itself, but by strengthening Advaita, also reminded all of these matas that they all merge into Advaita at some point. Because you can be a Vaishnava and still be Advaita. You can be a Shaiva and still be an Advaitin. It just means that if you are a Vaishnava and Advaitin, you will say, the form of Vishnu is what I like, but I know that Vishnu is that Nirguna Paramatma. Or if you are Nirguna Shaiva, you will say that Shiva is my Ishtadevata, but I know that Shiva in truth is that Nirguna Paramatma. And it is not like this is just in theory. We see prime examples of both of these in Madhusudana Saraswati and Appai Dikshitendra. So Madhusudana Saraswati wrote Advaita Siddhi. So, he is one of the most illustrious, names that we have in the Advaita Siddhanta, besides, of course, being a Paramahamsa. But he very clearly said that there is one shloka that he writes in his Gita Bhashya. He wrote one Godhartha Deepika. He says, Dhyanabhyasa Vashikritena Manasa Tan Nirgunam Nishkriyam Jyotihi. So, Jyotik Kinchana Yogino Yedi Param Pashyantute. The yogis, people who are realized, they say that Paramatma is Nirguna, Nirakara, Nishkriya. Let them say that. I agree with them. And he showed all of that in his writing. But he says, Asmakam tu, but for the peace of my mind, or for the sake of what my mind likes. Tadeva lochana chamatkaraya bhuyat. But for the sake of me, let that entity be in front of my eyes. What is that? Kalindi Pulinodare, on the banks of Yamuna. Kimapi yen Neelam Mahodhavati, that dark blue light that runs on the banks of Yamuna, that is to say Krishna. Let that be in front of my eyes. So if you look at the way this sloka is written, he says, Paramatma is Nirguna Nishkriya, and that is how Jnanis see it also. But I like the form of Krishna. I like to see that. I like the place of Krishna. So it is just that the form I like happens to be Krishna. But that entity is actually that Nirguna Nishkriya thing. But he says, I am very much a Krishna Bhakta. And on the flip side, you have Appaya Dikshitendra, who says several things. Maheshwareva Jagatamadhishware, Janardaneva Jagadantaratmani, Na Vastubheda Pratipatti Rastine. He says, in Maheshwara, who is the Jagatamadhishware, who is the master of these three worlds, or Janardaneva Jagadantaratmani, in Vishnu, who is the Vyapaka of these three worlds, Na Vastubheda Pratipatti Rastine. I see that there is no difference between these two. Tathapi, even so, Bhakti Tarunendu Shekhare. My bhakti is towards a form that has the moon on its crest. So it is, he is a Shaiva to the most, and he is a Vaishnava to the most, but they are both Advaita. So that is why both have written some very interesting granthas. Appaya Dikshitendra has written a Rangarajastava in praise of Ranganatha and written a Vyakhya to Vedanta Deshika's Yadavabhyudaya. These are Vaishnava texts. On the flip side, Mazudana Saraswati, who is a Krishna Bhakta par excellence, has written a Vyakhya for the Shiva Mahimna Stotra, showing how it refers to both Shiva and Vishnu. So, you can be a Vaishnava and still be a Vishnu Bhakta. You can be a Shaiva and you can be a Vaishnava and still be an Advaitin. You can be a Shaiva and still be an Advaitin. The difference is you just understand that my bhakti is towards I like this particular name and form, but the entity is one. So it is this feeling that Bhagavatpada brought within these 6 matas, and thereby, in that time in India, he allowed Sanatana Dharma to be strengthened from within. So it is because this was the framework that was put that Bhagavan is one. He has various names and forms. All of them are worthy of worship. You are welcome to look at any one of them as supreme. It is because this was the background that later on any number of sects were able to flourish in India. Whether the Shaivas came after that, or the Vaishnavas came after that, or the Shaktas came after that, they were able to find a grip and flourish in India. They existed before, but as we saw, they were severely weakened such that the Bauddhas and the other Nastikas could come in and completely shake them from their place. And also, they had devolved into tamasic practices. It is only after Bhagavatpada came, gave them this sattvic practice and this Advaitic background, that any other sect that professes the supremacy of any other deity afterwards were able to flourish, because this is the background. If any one deity sect had come before and established in this way, you would not have been able to have this wideness of practice. So it is no stretch. So what this Shanmatas Sthapanacharya calls us back to is that, first of all, sattvic worship we owe to Bhagavatpada, and secondly, the diversity of worship that we pride ourselves on is solely attributable to Bhagavatpada. We have all of these practices today and all of these temples because Bhagavatpada gave us a background that allowed all of these sects to flourish. And Bhagavatpada not only just gave this a philosophical background, but put it into practice. So basically, what does this entail? So far what we have come to is that Paramatma is one, he takes various forms. You are welcome to look at any one form as supreme, so long as you do not denigrate any other forms. So this is how far we have come right now. And this works well in theory. But it is human nature to say that whatever I do must be best and whatever anyone else does must be lesser. And you will seek to support that in any which way. And we have seen in some sects that have come after that have tried to do exactly that. So what you need to do is you need to ensure that there is a system that allows for this harmony between sects, which is why Bhagavatpada propagated the Panchayatana system, wherein you have these 5 Devatas, you put whatever you like the most in the middle. If you are a Vishnu Bhakta, you put the Vishnu Salagrama in the middle. But around that, you must put the Shiva, Surya, Ganesha, Devi, and worship all of them. If you are a Shiva Bhakta, you put that Banalinga in the middle, or you put that Shivalinga in the middle. But you must put Vishnu, Ganesha, Shiva, Devi, and Surya around and worship all of them. So basically, what does it mean? You must worship all of them. You just have a favorite. And as we said, the puja paddhati for all of them is more or less the same. So over due course of time, what do you end up with? I like this, but I'm worshipping them all the same way. So over time, you'll be led to the fact that they must all be the same. And whether you are led to that realization or not, you will say, I am worshipping Shiva, I am also worshipping Vishnu. He is worshipping Vishnu and also worshipping Shiva. What is the difference? So you will let him be. You do not have to interfere in someone else. I worship Vishnu, I will worship Vishnu. There is no need for me to comment and say that Shiva is a demigod or whatever nonsense terminology they use these days. If you are worshipping Shiva, you will worship Shiva. There is no need for you to put your finger in, or put your hand into whatever some Vishnu Bhakta is doing and say, hey, what he is doing is not proper, he is worshipping some lesser deity. There is no need for you to do that because you are worshipping both. So you will realize that what I do is what I do. These are all the same. If he likes some form, let him like that form. There is no need for me to interfere with him or convert him or do anything. Let him be. So this harmony was both theoretically propounded by Bhagavatpada in his writings and practically set in place by virtue of these Panchayatana Puja Paddhati. So that is why to this day it is a practice amongst Vaidika communities that this Panchayatana is referred to as Devatarchana. Devatarchana means Panchayatana worship. So this is the boon that Bhagavatpada has given us, that we can attribute the harmony between sects solely to Bhagavatpada, and also the fact that these sects now exist today in a sattvic form. We owe Bhagavatpada that too, which is why we prostrate to him as the Shanmatas Sthapana.
And therefore, we can also conclude that Shankaracharya is definitely the torchbearer of our glorious Sanatana Dharma.
Correct.
Because he instilled the oneness in
Correct.
worshipping. Lalithadityaji, I think we have touched upon the Advaitic concept of God in your previous answers already. So one thing is, if you could summarize the exact nature of God as prescribed in the Advaita school of thought, is one thing that I want to ask. The other thing is that there are a couple of misconceptions among people regarding the Advaitic concept, wherein they say if Aham Brahmasmi, if man is God, then what is the point of worship to God? One. And secondly, if man himself is God, then he doesn't need to fear the fruits of his misdeed. So, to those questions, what would your summary be?
Yeah. So it is a, a quite common misconception. Aham Brahmasmi does not mean exactly that I am God. That is not the literal translation, because as we said, right, God, that is why in the first episode we talked about the difference between God and Ishwara and a Devata. So whether in Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi, there are two ways that this is interpreted. So one is, for example, if we take Tattvamasi, there the way the Shruti explains it is, Sadeva Somya Idamagra Asid Ekameva Dvitiyam. So there was one Sat Padartha. It was one alone and without a second. Then from that Tadekshata Tadannama Tadekshata Tadaposrita Tadekshata Tatero. So through the sankalpa of that entity, this entire Jagat came into being. Tat Tvamasi. You are that. Aitadatmimidam sarvam. All of this Jagat is made up of that only. Either Aitadatmimidam sarvam, the Atma Tattvamasi Shvetaketo. That is how the line goes. So this Tat means that. What is that? That which is responsible for the Srishti Sthiti Layas of the Jagat. Right? That is what was talked about. The Purva Prakrita Vishaya is that. So when we say Tat, we mean that entity that is responsible for Srishti Sthiti Laya, which, as you said, is not Brahman, but is instead Ishwara.
Okay.
And Tvam is the Jiva. So these two are not the same. Advaita never says that these two are, because how can Ishwara and Jiva be the same? One is Sarvashakta, one is Alpashakta, one is Sarvajna, one is Kinchidnya. One is omniscient, one is limited. One is omnipotent, one is limited. So it is not the Ishwara and the Jiva that are the same. What we mean is, these two are the same in nature. The Chaitanya of Ishwara is no different than the Chaitanya of the Jiva. Which is why, if you remember, when we talked about that also, what did we say Ishvara is? It is Chaitanya when it takes upon Maya to perform the Srishti Sthiti Layas. Jiva is that same Chaitanya when it takes upon a body and a mind, attaches itself to it and feels Abhimana towards it. So you remove the body and the mind here, you remove Maya there, and what you have is the same Chaitanya. It is that same Chaitanya with Maya that acts as Ishwara, that same Chaitanya with the body-mind complex that acts as the Jiva. That is what we say is the same. It is not that Ishwara and Jiva are the same. That is never the case. And one more thing is in the Aham Brahmasmi, that Vakya also. This, of course, is one way that it is explained. There is one more that that the Sureshwaracharya, the Vartikakara, has shown, because this Aham Brahmasmi comes in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, for which he has written the Vartika. Sureshwaracharya wrote the Vartikas for both the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad Bhashya and the Taittiriya Upanishad Bhashya. So, because this Vakya comes in the Brihadaranyaka, that Bhagavatpada has written a Bhashya for. Sureshwaracharya also has written a bhashya for this, in the sense that Brahmasmiti dhiya ashesha hyaham buddhir nivartate pum dhiya sthanadhiriva. So there is one form of samanadhikaranya called badhayam samanadhikaranya. So basically what it means is, when you say this is that, it does not actually mean that the two are the same in all cases. For example, in the famous rope snake analogy that Vedantins love, you see a snake, you turn on the light, you see it is a rope. You say, oh, that snake is this rope. The snake is this rope. So the jiva is as much Ishvara as the snake is the rope. What do we actually mean? That which you thought to be the jiva is actually Brahman. That is what we mean when we say Aham Brahmasmi. So in the Prapancha, when we do Vyavahara, when we say Aham, I, what do we actually mean? Pashyami, I see, I hear, I go. What sees, hears and goes? The Indriyas and the body. I feel, I think, I remember. What actually thinks, remembers or feels? The antahkarana, the mind. So in the world, we are used to saying that aham, I, is the body and the mind. But it is not the body and the mind. That I is not the body and the mind. It is actually Brahman. That's Shuddha Chaitanya. So it is like saying, oh, that snake is this rope. It is akin to saying, Aham Brahmasmi. Aham ityukte sharirendriya sanghato na. Brahmasmi. That is one more interpretation that the Advaita school follows, and I think it is quite beautiful, because it does not deny that we do see ourselves to be the body-mind complex. And as long as we see that, Aham is not Brahma. It is only when you set aside the body-mind complex that Aham is Brahma. So this Badhayam Savanantakaranya shows this perfectly. Because, as I said, right, the snake is the rope. The snake is the rope. What does that mean? What I thought was the snake is actually a rope. In the same way, in this Aham Brahmasmi, what I thought was Aham, that is to say this body-mind complex, is actually Brahman. That sense of I-ness that I thought was the body-mind complex is actually Brahman. So this interpretation is significant, because it shows that until you realize that you are Brahman, you are very much tied to the body and the mind. So for those people who say that if I am actually, okay, whether I know it or not, I am still Brahman, right? It is not whether you know it or not. Until you know it, you cannot act that way, right? It is like someone actually has some, a massive bank balance, but he does not know it. If you tell him, you spend 3 lakhs right now, will he spend? He will not. You cannot do something unless you know you are something. So unless you know and feel that you are Brahman, you cannot say, I have no vidhi and nishedha. There is nothing that I can or can't do. No punya or papa touches me, and just act like that. As long as you have abhimana towards this body, you must follow the shastra that applies to the body. Because shastra applies to the body. Shastra does not apply to Atma. Shastra applies only to the body. So, for example, Shastra says, go take bath and come. No one tries to say, okay, let my Atma go take bath and come. Right? It means that the body needs Shaucha. So, you go take bath and come. So, the Shastras, the Punya Papas all apply to the body-mind complex. The Punya Papa applies to the mind. The Vidhi Nishedha usually applies to the body. So, as long as you still feel that sense of I-ness towards that, which means until you have not realized, not scholarly said that, oh, Aham Brahmasmi means this, but until you feel that I am not this body and the mind, but I am the Chaitanya, all the rules of duality apply. Until you realize that, then yes, Nistrayunye Pathi Vicharatam Ko Vidhi Ko Nishedha. Once you walk the path that is bereft of the 3 gunas, then there is no Vidhi Nishedha. But until then, you are very much the jiva that must follow all the Vidhi Nishedhas that Shastra sets upon you. So, Aham Brahmasmi does not mean I am God. It means that the Chaitanya of Maya is the same as the Chaitanya of God. And that is the Advaitic concept, in the sense that there is only one permanent entity. That is this Chaitanya. Whereas in the dualistic schools of thought, that is not the case. The Chaitanya of God of Bhagavan is different. The Chaitanya of each Jiva is different, or the Chaitanya of all Jivas as some is different. There is something that has an independent existence from Bhagavan. The thing in Advaita is there is nothing that has an independent existence from Paramatma. The Chaitanya of the Jiva is the Chaitanya of Paramatma. It is just like you're looking at it with tinted sunglasses and without tinted sunglasses. It is the same entity. And the Jagat also does not have an existence independent of Paramatma. The same way, how the snake does not have an existence independent of the rope. Without a rope, there is no snake. The snake is imposed on the rope, and the snake does not actually exist. In the same way, the Jagat exists until the light is turned on. In the same way that the snake exists until you turn on the light, the Jagat exists until you get that proper Brahma Jnana. So the Jagat also does not have an independent existence from Paramatma. So in the Advaitic school of thought, there is nothing but Brahman. And this actually fits the concept of bhakti perfectly, wherein you say, Tvameva sarvam mama deva deva. You are everything, including myself. Right? You cannot say that in a dualistic school of thought. You can only say that in the Advaitic school of thought. Right? So, which is why even in the Puranas, in the Vishnu Purana, when talking about Prahlada's experience, so this is not even when Narasimha comes out. So, this is where Hiranyakashipu is wrapping Prahlada in the snakes and having the snakes bite him. The Purana there writes the experience of Prahlada, Aham Narayana Sakshat. Vasudevoham Avyaya. Vasudevoham Avyaya. I am Vasudeva and I am Avyaya. That is the feeling that Prahlada had. So when we say that Prahlada saw Vishnu everywhere, what do we actually mean? It is not like Prahlada looks at a tree and a figure with 4 arms pops out at him. Right? It means we see that Prahlada knows that that Chaitanya, that is my true Antaratma, is the same Chaitanya that the tree is established in, that the Jagat is established in, that the tree itself draws its existence from. Right? When we say the tree is, the pot is, right? That is, as we said, that Sat, right? When he said the Satchidananda is Brahman, right? That is aspect, the tree derives that isness from Brahman. So when he sees that, he remembers that Brahman is that. Not even remembers, he feels that that is Brahman. So when you say Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva, right? In a dualist school of thought, you'll have to say Brahman is everything except me, or Brahman is everything except me and the Jagat. Or you also Brahman pervades the Jagat, but is not the Jagat. For us, the Brahman is everything. There is nothing that is not Paramatma, which is why even in that form of bhakti, if you have bhakti, Vishnu is everything, including my core nature. Shiva is everything, including my core nature, which is why you have Atmatvam, Girija Matihi, Sahachara Pranaha, Shariram Graham. That shloka is the pinnacle of Advaita. In the same way, you have in the Saundarya Lahari, Japo Jalpaha, Tilpam Sakalamavi Mudra Virachana, Natif Pradakshinya Kramanam, Ashanadyahuti Vidhi, Pranama Samveshaha, Akhilam Atmarpanataya, Saparya Paryaya Stavavati Enme Velasitam. The same expression is conveyed in Saundarya Lahari also. And the same expression is conveyed in various Vishnu Stotras also by Bhagavatpada. So, in the Advaitic school of thought, it is the school of thought in which there is nothing but Paramatma. That is what we mean to say Advaita. There is no second entity. Right? There is nothing else. All other second entities are superimposed. And we do not deny duality. When you interact in the world, duality exists and you must follow the rules of duality. So when we say Advaita, it means that Dvaita is not the final end all beyond. But as far as interaction with the world is concerned, Dvaita does exist. And there is nothing but Paramatma. So that is what we mean when we say Aham Brahmasmi or Tattvamasi. It is not that I am God. I am not the creator, sustainer, dissolver of the universe. That Chaitanya of Ishwara and the Chaitanya of myself is one. We are not two separate entities. That is what we mean.
Right. I think that's a very clear message that Aham Brahmasmi does not mean man is God and therefore he doesn't need to do any rituals or doesn't fear his misdeeds. But the true nature, the Chaitanya Shakti of the man is the same as the Chaitanya Shakti of the Brahman. Thank you so much, Shatavadhani, Vidwan Lalithaditya, Gannavaram ji. This has been such an insightful session. I'm sure the youngsters of today, the kids of our nation, will be inspired by your message, your knowledge. and I'm sure they can now appreciate our glorious Sanatana Dharma better, stick to it, and elevate themselves in this world. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Namaste.